Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Morning, Dr. Rubin. I told you, I always feel fantastic when Dr. Rubin says my name. And I said it just has a different ring to it. I love it. I do. Even now, usually, for years and years, I always introduce myself formally, as you guys know, as Femi. Everyone calls me Femi. But like nowadays, it's just like, my name is Adefemi. You just, have to say the whole thing. Do you know what I mean?
It has a ring to it. I just remember the Israeli blowing up Hezbollah page as
well. We're getting to that.
Be careful with ring and phone.
We have to be very, very careful with our personal electronics. Let me tell you exactly why Rufai is worried about personal electronics. Let's start our world brief. Pages used by hundreds of members of the militant group Hezbollah exploded almost simultaneously in Tuesday in Lebanon and Syria, killing at least 9 people, including an 8-year-old girl, and also wounding several thousand others. That's according to officials. Now, Hezbollah and the Lebanese government have blamed Israel for what appeared to be a sophisticated remote attack. An American official says Israel briefed the United States on Tuesday after the conclusion of the operation, in which small amounts of explosive secreted in the pages were detonated. Now, the person, according to these reports, it has not been named, but they also were not able to authorize, or they were not authorized rather, to discuss the information publicly. But what we are seeing is that the Israeli military have also declined to comment or take responsibility for this act. Among those wounded, though, was Iran's ambassador to Lebanon. And these mysterious explosions do come amid rising tensions between Israel and, of course, the Iran-backed Hezbollah group, which have exchanged fire across the Israel-Lebanon border since the October 7 attack by Hamas that sparked this latest iteration of the war in Gaza. A crazy, crazy story. Let's move on now. And hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs has pleaded not guilty to 3 charges: racketeering, sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, as well as the transportation to engage prostitution. Gosh, so many words, I'm almost falling over all of these crimes. Now let's take a listen to the charges that have been laid against him.
The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice.
Hatton judge, has gone on to deny Combs' request for bail and has ordered him to remain in detention until his trial starts. Now, prosecutors have alleged that Combs used his vast business empire to threaten, violently assault, and coerce women into fulfilling his sexual desires. There's a 14-page indictment which mentions how 1,000 bottles of baby oil and other lubricants were found in his home following raids on 2 of his properties in Los Angeles and Miami earlier this year, back in March, as part of this ongoing investigation into sex trafficking. Now, Combs and his lawyer have denied all allegations leveled against him. And if he is convicted of even just one of these, if it is this sex trafficking, for example, it comes with a minimum of 15 years imprisonment. So very, very serious case happening there in the United States. And now from one legal battle to the other, and 93-year-old Rupert Murdoch is in the middle of a fierce court battle with his children. The media magnate who owns News Corporation and Fox News is sorting who will have control over his media empire when he dies, as well as the family's $19.6 billion trust. Rupert seeks to change the Murdoch family trust that dates back to 1999 and handled all of these succession arrangements. Now, the trust detailed that the family gets 8 votes on the board of News Corp and Fox News, 4 of which belong to Rupert and the other 4 to his eldest children. When Rupert dies, the 4 older siblings would have equal number of votes. However, Rupert wants to alter the trust so that his son, Lachlan, who's 53 years old, would get total control and voting power without his siblings' interference. It's okay. All righty, well, let's move on now to some news coming out of the United States. And the Senate on Tuesday has failed for a second time to advance an IVF protection bill by a vote of 51 to 44. The legislation did need 60 votes to advance, but was largely dismissed by Republicans as a political stunt meant to drum up support for vulnerable Democrats. We know reproductive rights to be a flashpoint in this upcoming election, and Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, dared Republicans, he said, to block this bill again, saying that if the Senate votes no and strikes IVF protections down yet again, it will be further proof that Project 2025 is alive and well. Let's also be clear that Donald Trump has distanced himself consistently from Project 2025. Moving on to the African continent now, and Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, whose military leaders took over power in a series of coups between 2020 and 2023, will be launching new biometric passports in the coming days as part of their withdrawal from ECOWAS. Following the coups, West African countries sanctioned the juntas, aiming to push them to quickly restore civilian rule. But the three nations that now form the alliance of Sahel states have so far resisted the calls, opting to cement their alliance instead. This latest announcement comes as ECOWAS is engaged in efforts to get the three Sahel nations to return to the bloc. And finally, Binance executive Tigran Gambaryan remains in detention here in Nigeria, despite a United States lawmaker in the House of Representatives, James Hill, saying last week that the long-time detention of their colleague, of this Binance person in Nigeria, could negatively impact the bilateral relations between the United States and Nigeria. Let's take a listen to that.
This administration, we've seen a lot of action on Americans held wrongfully detained abroad. And they frequently get a designation. But suddenly here we have a country like Nigeria where we removed them from the list in the Biden administration on religious freedom issues. We've signed a commercial and investment partnership with that country in the middle of this personal tragedy. And I don't think the leadership, the National Security Advisor, the president, the cabinet leadership in Nigeria gets. They're putting our relationship on the line.
Now, in a statement on his verified X account, Hill did write that I'm surprised Nigeria, a country considered to be a friend to America, is holding a U.S. citizen in detention over a matter he's not directly involved in. I urge President Biden to push harder for his release. There's a lot of stories that we've looked at today in today's World Brief. Please give me your comments.
The pager thing obviously was very sophisticated technology. It's not the first time sophisticated technology was going to be used in warfare. The Second World War ended because of technology, and kudos to Alan Turing. It was when Turing could crack the codes of the Germans that it tipped the balance of the war, and they could know the positioning of the Germans, and the war ended. But Alan Turing wasn't recognized because obviously you know the story. It was, homosexual and all of that and all that shenanigans that went up. But now he's being recognized many years after. But that role that technology plays, and you can see they don't want to keep that technology open source, but definitely it's well within their right, well within the mark, and they've used it. But you can also ask questions about is that, the ethical question in a war, even when you have technologies like that. But obviously the Israelis that made the Pegasus software that can hack into your WhatsApp line and all of that, definitely they can. Scary stuff. As regards Diddy Combs, this has been going on for a while. I mean, we remember when we saw the Cassie's video and all of that, and all that has happened. But let's see how it pans out when he goes to court. He's pleaded not guilty. But before the FBI will finally arrest you, definitely they've done their homework.
Exactly.
They were talking about over 1,000 tins of baby oil. Maybe that was for lubrication, for all sorts of activities, only God knows what. They talked about firearms and all of that in the mix, and they've talked about a trail of women trafficking and things like that. Very, very sad one. But let's see how the trial will go as regards this case, and let's see how it comes to the end. As regards the American citizen Gambaryan being here, and the American lawmakers saying, America should give some concessions to Nigeria, they should remember, one, Nigeria is a sovereign state. Cool. We have a reason to be able to try people if they have acted in contravention with the law. What we can just call is for the rule of law and human rights to be maintained in this Gambaryan case. We have also criticized the states, for the way they went about it in the first place, which is very high-handed and all of that, because people were called in for a conversation and it led to an arrest and all of that.
Right.
Because America too that talks, they too can be very hypocritical. You can also make the case about many things that has happened in America. We can't keep going on and on and on and on as regards all of the atrocious things they too have also done. So this idea of trying to boss another nation and teleguide them, it's a no-no for me. I'll yield the floor.
All right. Thank you for bringing so many incredible stories. I don't even know where to begin from, but let's start from the pages. And I'm glad Rufai made reference to the Second World War, because truly I think we take for granted the fact that we are at the brink, possibly if there's no intervention, we're at the brink of World War III. And we should be alarmed, we should be more vigilant, more action should be taken, because there's so many pockets blowing up in so many places that, although they're in different places, everything is interlinked and intertwined in various ways. You also brought the story about the African countries, the Mali, Burkina Faso, who have now, released their passports that are outside of ECOWAS. And of course, in that, there's always a conversation about the Russian influence. So we can't negate the fact that right now, there's a massive proxy, I don't want to call it a war yet, but there's a proxy battle, a hegemonic battle going on at the moment. And if we're not careful, we're just at the precipice of a massive, massive third world war. So, I really hope that those in power, those in the corridors of power, are doing what needs to be done to avert it, because nobody benefits from that. Then very quickly, Rupert Murdoch. Now, this is a story, I've been invested in this story because I watched the series Succession, which is loosely based on this family story. And first of all, I think it's just deplorable that a man would be in his 70s and his children opt to allow him to spend his elderly days in court fighting over...
He's in his 90s, even.
93.
Sorry,
Excuse me. 93. And your own children want you to spend the latter days of your life in court fighting over a business you built. By the way, the entitlement is a lot. However, with parenting, I always say that we reap what we sow.
Yes.
When you look at the story of Succession, although it's a loosely based on the family, that this man was a divide and conquer kind of parent. He pitted his children against each other. Now, what's the problem here? The problem is politics. That some of them are starting to lean more towards the democratic allegiances, whereas Lachlan, who is his favorite son, who he wants to continue, is a staunch Republican like he is. And of course, we all know the Murdoch empire is, one of the, if not the greatest media partner of the Republican Party. So I just wish that everybody could find a way to respect this man's wishes. He's made a massive impact in media globally. Respect his wishes and let him continue his legacy after he's gone in the way he best sees. You can't be fighting your father over inheritance while he's alive.
Let's see.
Okay, the synchronized orchestrated attack targeting members of the Hezbollah group in Lebanon and parts of Syria that resulted in the death of 9 persons and the injury of injury with 2,700 persons. We seem to point attention to the following facts. One, the risk of technology. You see these little gadgets we carry, whether they are pagers or they are telephones, they are also, very dangerous security devices. And the point has been made that, look, you can be targeted. And that's why at high security levels, some of these gadgets, some persons that are of very serious security importance don't carry phones or pagers that you can easily access. So technology is good, but it comes with its own risk. That's one lesson for humanity. The second thing is the scenario itself. There's no love lost between Israel and Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah has vowed to retaliate. Hezbollah has held Israel responsible. Now, the fear now is that will there be another war front opened at a more expanded level between Israel and Hezbollah. Israel has not claimed responsibility, but every finger is pointing in the direction of Israel, retaliating again on the basis of the aggression between Israel and Hamas on one hand, Israel and Hezbollah on another hand, Israel and Iran at another level. That's that about that. Now, Diddy Combs. Now, the latest thing to know is that today he's going to appear in court. He was detained at the Metropolitan detention center yesterday, which is a special detention facility where they keep persons that they think may be at risk because of who they are. Bankman Fried was kept there. Ghislaine Maxwell was kept there. R. Kelly was also kept in that special facility. He's going to go. His lawyers are going to court today to appear before, Judge Carter, to ask that, the denial of bail should be waived. If that does not happen, it goes back to that, MDC. But, you've read out the charges. Yeah. The charges say that it's not just a serial, criminal. It's also a serial abuser, involving kidnapping, prostitution, violation of other person's rights, assault, and all of that. And this investigation has been on for years, including the video that was shown of a 2016 attack on a lady called Cassie Ventura, who used to be his girlfriend. So the prosecutors are saying they have overwhelming evidence. The other party, his own lawyers, are saying, well, you don't have overwhelming evidence, that it's even lighter than they expected. Finally, Nigeria and Gambanyan. Well, Nigeria is a sovereign state. There are two charges against the Gambanyan fellow. One is about tax evasion. That had been withdrawn by the FRS. But there is the subsisting case of money laundering that the EFCC is still pursuing in court. He has already spent 6 months in detention in Kuje prison. We have had opportunity here to say that his rights should be respected. But Representative Honorable Hill, from Arizona, Republican. He and one other person, a Democratic representative from Pennsylvania, purportedly visited him in July in Nigeria. And they were saying that he should be released on humanitarian grounds because they think that the conditions in which he is kept in Nigeria, that they are not good enough. Right. So if they are saying it's humanitarian grounds that they are pleading for, they should know that Nigeria as a sovereign state cannot, even if the person is a diplomat, allow the laws of the land to be violated by anybody, whether American or Canadian or whatever, because they're not saying, oh, this is a whole state situation. I think the Americans should also respect the laws of the land. What is instructive is that the United States government has not yet intervened. But they're saying an American citizen being held hostage. Did the American citizen commit crime? So, but all of this can be resolved at a diplomatic level with due respect for Nigerian laws and sovereignty.
Agreed. Well, let's move on now to some newspaper headlines happening across the globe. And we begin here in Nigeria with This Day newspaper. This Day's picture stories features, among others, the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, who is second from left, as well as the Minister of the FCT, Sam Wike, and of course our very own Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of Arise News Group and This Day newspaper, respectively, as the libel case between This Day and Wike is settled amicably, seemingly, from the pictures that we've seen. Also on the front page is a breakdown of the strengths and weaknesses, which my colleagues have done a great job of breaking down, of the three candidates hoping to become governor of Edo State following the election this Saturday. You've got Aswai Godalo of the PDP on the left, Olumide Akpata of the Labour Party in the middle, and as well as Monday Okpebolo on the far right there. Also, if we move on to the New Telegraph now, the former military head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, on Tuesday in Minna, over in Niger State, did take a critical look at the condition of how Nigerians are living, concluding that, and he says, the hardship in the land is getting out of control, that everybody is crying because of this hardship. And he also went on to say that palliative distribution alone will not solve this hardship problem. He also had some harsh words for President Tinubu, accusing him of demobilizing and destroying democratic structures and bringing Nigeria back to an era of arbitrary arrests, the detention of journalists, where labor leaders are being detained, as well as opposition members. So very harsh words there. And then if we move on to the Daily Trust proves that we're never too far away from discussing petrol and petrol pricing. And as we can see on the front page of the Daily Trust, Nigeria's midstream, downstream petroleum Petroleum Regulatory Authority says the NNPCL is not usurping its powers. It says these are a lot of abbreviations here. The NMDPRA goes on to say that the NNPCL is not a regulator and cannot fix prices. Meanwhile, IPMAN looks out for official notifications. Let's take a look at the front page of The Guardian. Today is World Patient Safety Day, and The Guardian is leading with Nigeria battling the spike in medical errors as well as negligence in hospitals. It's such a harrowing article if you all get a chance to read it, but one thing that stood out was the account of one patient who said that they went through 8 sessions of chemotherapy, 25 rounds of radiotherapy, and a single mastectomy. That's surgery to remove a breast. And then it turned out that the cancer diagnosis was an error. In fact, diagnostic errors constitute 16% of patient harm in Nigeria. Practitioners say that the lack of quality care boils down to the poor standard of medical equipment and infrastructure in the country. I do want to make clear that it is worth noting that, of course, there are reputable and leading institutions for medical care in Nigeria, but clearly, with stories like this, they appear to be dwarfed by reports of such incompetence. Definitely implore you all to read that article. And then lastly, the Daily Independent looks at some business and economic news. Its headline says that the CBN says external reserves are at risk on the back of this fuel subsidies cut. Let's move on to some African papers now. And the Daily Nation of Kenya is still tethered to this story about looking at the Indian conglomerate Adani Group and its business presence in Kenya. Earlier this month, there were strikes at airports across Kenya due to workers believing that a deal to lease the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi to Adani Group for 30 years was shrouded in secrecy. And just yesterday, Rufai, you also brought up how Adani's involvement in electricity supply in the country is also another cause for contention. Kenya did award Kenya's electricity transmission had awarded I think it's a 1.4 billion, something like that, a public partnership agreement with Adani Group in order for infrastructure in electricity to be developed. So this partnership, yes, is valued at $1.3 billion and will enhance, they say, the country's power transmission infrastructure, including the building of a 422-kilometer high voltage power line across the country, across Kenya. And then the Citizen of South Africa, its headline is asking where the rest of class of 2024 is. That's because nearly 500,000 pupils who started grade 1 with this year's class of 2024 will not be writing their final matriculations. Now, this 39% shortfall has been attributed to dropouts, students transferring to technical and vocational education, as well as training institutions, and also students being forced to repeat grades. Lastly, if you take a look at the Daily Mail, along with other British dailies, they feature this exploding pages story and how Hezbollah has blamed Israel for the attack. The paper says that it's putting the Middle East on the brink, as you said, Vimbai. And then The Guardian UK, lastly, also features Keir Starmer being defended by Pat McFadden, who is the Chancellor of the Duchy in Lancashire, amid a row over gifts received from a party donor, which included clothing to Keir Starmer's wife, which he failed to declare. Yeah.
You can see the level of integrity in their country. Just gifts, clothing, and everything. He failed to declare it. It's become a big scandal in the UK. In Nigeria, you know, politicians get away with murder. Till today, we've not investigated what happened to the Alu Dam. The Lagdo Dam, too, might be a problem soon. Alau Dam, sorry. The Lagdo Dam, too, might be a problem soon. Because if the waters are pulled out, we might have flooding over the country. Have we prepared for that? Have we built our own end of that? So it's lack of accountability here.
Agreed.
What shocks me about Kenya, I'm talking about Adani deal, is the fact that first it was the British that came to colonize. Secondly, now we're having Indians coming. The Kenya people are pushing against that deal. You're seeing about 1.3 billion electricity will increase the electricity bill. Yeah, they're saying they're coming for business. I don't have problems with business. But when a business does not favor the nation and one hand is higher because they have some, that's why they were asking those questions, that what do the Ruto and other people know about that? As regards the medical diagnostic, Femi, one of your biggest stories when you first came here to Nigeria was about Chef Peju Goma.
Yes.
How did that case end? Have we seen any end to the case, or is it still on?
Well, I mean,
So
they
that's a
came to the end of their coroner's inquest, and it did go in favour of the family, so they were quite
Good.
happy with
So
that.
that's-
But it does highlight this issue.
Why did he go in front of the family? Why did he go? Why did that case even come to bear? Because you had the Babatunde Rukera, the former DG of anti-competition, that was ready to stand firm.
Yes, the FCCPC, yes.
The question is, if you don't have strong institutions to stand firm, there are a lot of people that have been killed due to misdiagnosis. That's why it's almost every Nigerian wants to get a second opinion.
Sure.
And that's the kind of country we live in. Those are the things we should fix. You saw the independent story that was saying that the removal of subsidy is now affecting our reserves. So when the Bretton Woods institution are lying to you that remove subsidy for everything, you can see how it destroys the country.
Very quickly, you know, Rufai touched on colonialism in Kenya and Kenyans fighting back to ensure that there isn't a repeat. It doesn't sneak in through the back door by other means. Right. And for me, that highlights the issue with education in South Africa, which is that apartheid legacy. For those who may not know, Bantu education, during apartheid, black people were disadvantaged. They were forced to study in Afrikaans, a language foreign to them, and there were so many hindrances. The curriculum was, was broken down in so many ways that meant that today you have a problem with education in South Africa. Now, last week, the president passed the Bella Bill, which is supposed to increase access to education, and most importantly, it's supposed to decrease the number of schools, public schools in South Africa, that are forcing learners to learn in Afrikaans. So it's become a big brouhaha with white South Africans saying, no, we need our Afrikaans schools. But at the end of the day, what about all the other languages spoken in South Africa? Are they reflected? So when we look at the pass rate, they call it the matriculants. When you look at those who started the year, they are not finishing the year, they're not sitting for exams and so forth. It's so important to look at the legacy, the precursor of education, in South Africa, and how we ended up here, and which is why we should always stand against neo-colonialism.
Some quick comments about two topics. Let's start with the World Patient Safety Day, which is a major problem at the center of the mismanagement of the health sector in Nigeria. And you made a point, front page story in The Guardian, about how a lot of people suffer from medical errors, negligence in Nigerian hospitals. I'll tell you two stories quickly, just to convey how this is serious. Now, we all know Chief Gani Fawemi. He died in 2011. Now, one of the statements that was put out when he died was that, look, he was diagnosed for pneumonia in Nigeria, and he was being treated for pneumonia for more than 2 years. When he went to the UK hospital discovered that it was a case of cancer. Meanwhile, he had been mistreated all along because in Nigeria, it's either the hospitals are not up to par or the equipment do not work. And there are many people who have gone through the same experience as Chief Gani Fawemi, now of blessed memory, one of the best lawyers, that this country produced. The second story, as regards medical negligence in Nigeria, was maybe a prokifa about a man who went to seek a second opinion in the UK. He had done an X-ray here. He went with his X-ray report. He said they told him in Nigeria that there was a cockroach in his chest. When they repeated the X-ray test in London, they said, no, there's no cockroach in your chest. The cockroach must be in the machine. So this is the story of Nigeria. And the main message here is that our leaders should take health care seriously, because a healthy nation, will have healthy people. Healthy people make a healthy nation. But our leaders, they will build big hospitals, they will not equip them. And that is why many of our medical experts are going abroad. Finally, as regards Kestama and Lord Ali, there is a rule in the UK, as in other countries, that yes, you can accept gifts, but those gifts must be declared according to parliamentary rules. Now, Lord Ali, that's the name of the Labour supporter, he gave Lady Stama 5,000 worth of money, to buy clothing. She even wore one of those beautiful clothes about 2 days ago. He has been buying suits for Kestama himself, and also the glasses he wears, and also a campaign, a private office, and people are kicking, saying, no, you cannot collect gifts. But Kestama has been very adamant. He says that all the gifts have been declared according to parliamentary rules. To the point, therefore, about standards. In Nigeria here, do you know how many gifts our parliamentarians...
in Nigeria?
People give gifts.
No, I don't believe it.
Oh, okay. But nobody declares anything here.
So how do we know?
So, about standards, about values. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
Adefemi, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Fantastic. All right.